They say there's nothing like the bond between sisters. At times you're sworn enemies, fighting bitterly, throwing hairbrushes. Other times you're each other's fiercest allies, defending one another at all costs. Some sisters even get a higher calling as caregivers.
Remember that the person that's sick didn't expect to be in the position any more than you did, and to be gracious about the fact that the person that's sick feels much worse that you have to help them than you do about helping them.
That's Betty Lewis, attorney, mom, and sister of our very own Monica Fox. She's here today to share her experience as a caregiver. I'm Sarah Jane Castro, and this is The Journey Continues. Betty, thanks so much for coming on The Journey Continues. It's fun to get to be the one to talk to you, even though you're Monica's sister.
Well, thank you for having me.
Can you tell us what it was like having Monica as a big sister growing up?
It was great having Monica as a big sister. We have a large age gap, so Monica was able to be not only a big sister, but sort of another mom to me in many ways. So I was lucky enough to be able to be 5 years old, going to college football games and fun things that only a sister would allow a little kid sister to hang around and do. So it was great having a sister like Monica.
That sounds like a lot of fun. What did you think of her when you were a little girl? I have a much older big sister, and I thought she was the coolest, most beautiful person in the whole world.
Same. I just thought she was perfect. And Monica's always been a rule follower and a very sweet person, just in general, her spirit. And so I just always looked up to her and loved her and was just always excited to be able to go anywhere she was and do anything she was doing.
That's very sweet. In what ways did she take care of you? You said she was kind of like a second mom.
So again, our age difference is actually 12 years. And so as I was growing up, she was able to sort of be an advocate for me in between my parents. So we have very different temperaments. I've always kind of just made my own way and had my own things that I had in my mind, even as a small child. And so my parents didn't always agree. And Monica was always able to step in and say, just allow her to do her thing, or, kind of intercede when I needed intercession with my parents. So that was usually the dynamic.
How has your relationship with Monica changed over the years like when you're a kid, that age gap seems huge, but when you're adults, it probably doesn't seem so big at all.
I would say the age so much doesn't matter. So Monica ended up having her daughter, Olivia, when I was probably maybe 16,
Okay.
I'd say. And so I became that advocate for Olivia. So things sort of shifted in that way, not so much age, but just sort of life shifting. So I used to bring Olivia to my college and go to football games and keep her with me over the summer and things like that. So I advocated for her in a lot of ways. So I think our relationship has shifted just based on life circumstances and not so much based on age as we got older.
I like that the same pattern repeated. That's a lot of fun that you have
It is.
a child with you at college football games.
Yeah, it was awesome. And all of my college friends love Olivia. They always ask about her. They can't believe that she has her own child now. So
Right.
it's kind of full circle, life circle.
Yeah. So let's fast forward to adulthood. What was happening in your life before anything with Monica's kidneys was going on?
So in my life, a few things. I had my own child somewhere in there in the mix. So I became a mom. And I also was a caregiver to another relative. My mom's younger sister became critically ill at a time where she was not comfortable sharing her condition really with the rest of our family. And so I became her caregiver sort of unexpectedly. So that preceded my caregiving for Monica.
As I was preparing for this interview, I thought, I bet so few people expect to become caregivers. It kind of seems like one of those things that, well, sure, when you're preparing to be a mom, that's one thing. But for like a relative like this, it sounds like a lot of people unexpectedly fall into that caregiving role. What did that look like with your mom's sister, with your aunt?
My aunt had been apparently suffering with some illnesses for a while, and nobody sort of knew what was really going on with her. And as we became aware that something was seriously wrong, one day I went to an appointment with her, and she ended up having a form of cancer, a very advanced form of cancer. I went to an appointment with her, and she said something like, "Will you go on this ride with me?" Something to that effect. And I somehow knew what she meant. And all I could say was, sure. And she asked me to be discreet. She did not want to worry anyone in the family, my grandma or any of her siblings or anyone, her own children. So it was just that. Will you go on this ride with me? And so we did it.
How did that feel to be her trusted confidant in that?
I would say I was shocked, really. I was humbled because that's a big ask. So for her to trust me in that role was humbling.
Yeah. Yeah. Was it difficult to balance your career and motherhood and caring for your aunt?
It was. The caretaking for my aunt was really a period of 6 months, a very compact 6 month period. So from basically around July to Christmas Day was the time period. And it was very difficult because it was sort of a full-time job on top of all of my other responsibilities, but a very beautiful time at the same time.
Yeah, that does seem like such a almost sacred responsibility to be given, to be the person that she's trusting with this information that's very scary, I'm sure, and you're the person she's putting her trust in. That has to feel like a humbling responsibility that's being placed upon you.
It was, yes.
So with Monica being 12 years older than you, had you ever considered that one day you might end up taking care of her?
No, never.
I wouldn't think so. She's your big sister. She was your hero growing up. Like you probably think we're going to be fine. We'll be together forever. She's invincible.
Yeah, she's always the strong one and the one juggling everything and doing everything for everyone. So no, I never once considered or thought about it, really.
Well, walk us through that day when she sort of crashed into dialysis. And for those who haven't, I really encourage you to go back and listen to Monica's episode about her story. It was sort of unexpected, right?
It was very unexpected. And it's interesting that you used the word crashed because it started out in the car where I had to be a passenger with Monica driving when it became very clear to me that she was so sick that we might not even be able to make it to the hospital. However, she was so sick that I was afraid that if she got out of the car and switched seats, that it was that critical at the time. So I had to kind of trust her to drive us to the hospital. She pulled up in the driveway and I had been worried about her because she left work and then there was like a long period of time that I didn't hear from her. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, where is she? So finally she pulls up and I could see how sick she was. And so I said to her, you're just going to have to keep driving. We're going to the hospital. So I jumped in the passenger seat. And the whole time I was thinking, I hope we make it to the hospital.
What happened when you got to the hospital?
We got to the hospital and immediately it was the nurses running out with a wheelchair, rushing her to the back. It was just a very rapid emergency response sort of situation. I don't really know how to describe it any differently than that. Normally when you walk into an ER, you triage, they ask you questions, then they come back, call your name. There was none of that. It was wheelchair to the back, lights, tubes, the whole nine.
How did you feel seeing her like that?
It was just sort of a blur. I was confused. I was scared.
And when they diagnosed her and said, your kidneys are failing and you need to start dialysis, did you go into task mode? What happened next?
I don't know that they right away said your kidneys are failing. It was a critical stage. Just everything was haywire at the time. I remember they rushed her up to the ICU very quickly. So I'm in the ICU and a doctor came in. And at the time, the ICU room looked like a regular sort of hospital room when she got in there. And so the doctor pulled me aside and he said, look, we have to do this procedure. He said, and it's right now, we have to do it. It's a life or death kind of procedure. It is risky. However, if we don't do this procedure, I don't know what's going to happen. And he described what could happen. And it was just so quickly. So this is even before the kidney part got discussed. And so Monica, to back up a little bit, had been sick, but like more like having the flu or bad cold for like a week before this. And she kept saying, oh, I just have a cold. Oh, I'm just not feeling well, which was fine. So we go from a cold to now we're in the ICU. And so the doctor tells me this and he explains what can happen if he doesn't do this procedure. And I understood what he meant. It was quite clear that it was life or death at this point. And so she was still alert at the time. I asked him, I said, can you send everyone out? I need to talk with her for a minute. And so he said, okay, you got a minute. This is a heart surgeon. He's doesn't have time. He's like, you got a minute. I said, okay. And so I went and I grabbed her hand and we had a talk. And the talk consisted of, I asked her, are you willing to fight? Are you ready to fight? You've got a long fight ahead of you, according to what this doctor is saying. They need to do this and I'm going to have to sign papers. And are you willing to fight? And she said, Olivia needs me. And she said, I'm ready. And so I said, okay. And so I signed the papers and all of a sudden that ICU room turned into like Inspector Gadget, like stuff started coming out of the ceiling, lights and whatever. And they did the procedure and she came through it like a champ. And so then the things started after that with the dialysis and the kidneys. But that was a very critical stage pretty much as soon as we got there.
So there's not really any time to feel scared and feel like, oh, I don't know if we're ready for this. It's just, let's go.
It's just go. It's go time.
Once the dust sort of settled, how did it feel to sort of switch roles? Like she's been your big sister. She's been the one taking care of everybody, thinking for everybody. And now you're in that role. How did that feel?
It was just really different. And, because Monica is such a go-getter and so used to taking care of everyone, part of the management of it was letting her know it was okay to let go and get better so that she could get better and stop managing everything that she manages and that kind of thing. So it just became just sort of a relationship where it was trust that had to be built to let her know that it was okay to be not okay for a while.
So what did life look like when she came home, when she was out of the hospital?
Oh boy, there were so many iterations of it. I would say that it was just a lot of managing different situations because as you know, with kidney disease, there are a lot of different phases that a person goes through, particularly during the dialysis phase. It's hard on your body, a difficult thing to go through. And so it was a lot of different balls in the air trying to juggle, just keeping her spirits high, making sure she was physically okay and doing everything she needed to do to be well. It was just kind of learning what was needed for the position, the job, and being able to execute all of those avenues.
You're learning on the go, it sounds like. To my knowledge, you don't have anyone else in your family who's experienced this sort of thing, right?
No.
So you're having to learn all about dialysis and the types of appointments and the types of things you need to watch out for and all of that. It's a huge learning curve for both the patient and the caregiver, it sounds like.
Yes, and cooking, what kind of foods. There's a lot of different dietary restrictions. And so it was just a lot of different things to actually learn. And the beauty part is that Monica was always very positive. I don't remember a time where she was, why me? At least she never expressed that to any of us. She educated herself. She started volunteering with Gift of Hope and learning as much as she could about her disease and her condition. And and really being cathartic about her process in terms of sharing her own story. That was a beautiful thing at the time.
That had to be helpful to you to see that she's been handed this set of circumstances that nobody saw coming, but she's taking it and making the best of it, learning and growing and getting involved. And that had to feel good to see that your sister is still the sister you knew.
Yes, she never left. She does talk, and again, like you said, everybody should go back and listen to her story. I'm not sure if she shared this, but she told me that there was like 4 or 5 days, I think she said, where they were gone, like she didn't remember anything, and I never knew that at the time. So she lost a part of everything that was going on, which I think sometimes is a good thing.
Yeah.
Maybe our memories are protective for us.
Right. What sorts of day-to-day care did you give her? You mentioned cooking. You mentioned keeping her spirits up, making sure she's doing what she needs to be doing. What did those things look like day to day?
Well, so there was once where I remember it was Christmas time and she was in a rehab. So she was in the hospital for such a time that she was unable to, she had to relearn how to walk and pretty much do everything. And so after she left the hospital, she went to a rehab. I hope she's never shared the name of this rehab, but she hated it there. She was not a happy camper in this rehab. So she called me one day, and I feel like it was Christmas Eve or something. It was around Christmas time, and she said, "Can I come home to visit?" And I'm like, I was thinking to myself, I mean, first of all, my house wasn't set up for a wheelchair or any type of, none of that. So, and at the time she couldn't really walk or anything. And she just sounded so upset. And so I called one of my best friend and I'm like, "Look, I need you to come over and help me." So she comes over and we get things as accessible as we could. And then she came home. We went and picked her up and found a way to get the wheelchair into the house and, just gave her that day or so. And of course, then she went back to the rehab. But I mean, there were just things that, there were just things.
We talked about it a little bit earlier when you were caregiving before, having to reconfigure your house, having to think about all these appointments and cooking and all of that. On top of, you are an attorney and you do have a son. How did you do all these things?
I just did it. I don't know how to describe it. It was just something I did. And my son is a very spiritual person. He would uplift me. He would tell me, "Mom, you got to be strong. Tanti needs you. You have to help her feel joy again." He would be giving me speeches. He's 6 years old, telling me to pull it together. Sometimes I wouldn't do it in front of Monica, but sometimes I'd come home and just cry. So that was helpful. He was a trooper as well. He went through it as much as I did, for sure.
What a strong young man at 6 to be encouraging your mom and noticing the need.
Yes.
That's a very perceptive 6-year-old.
He's a very perceptive guy. So that was very helpful. So just everybody kind of came together and made sure that everything was okay.
Sounds like you managed to stay fairly well organized and you had a community. What helped you stay on top of things?
I know that everybody manages stress and things differently. I am a Christian. I believe in God. So there was a lot of prayer, honestly, because I didn't understand a lot of what was going on. So I just needed strength and I would pray for it. I do have good friends and that was tremendously helpful. Sometimes I just call and we'd go to lunch and I would vent. They kept me good for the most part. So that was helpful.
Yeah, you can't overrate how important that is to have someone to talk to.
Yes, it's very important to have a support system, have friends, have people, have someone that you can, talk to.
What were some of the things you do to try to keep Monica's spirits up?
So I would always go, especially when she was in the hospital or in the rehab, and tell a silly joke or do something goofy to have her laugh. I start random banters with strangers. So I would always come in and talk to the nurse or start talking about some random sports situation or whatever was going on in the world. And that would always kind of open up conversations and make Monica laugh when I would come into the hospital, I like Jell-O, but only the orange kind. So I would say, "Are you going to eat that?" And she's looking at me like I'm the one that's in the hospital. She's like, "You can have it." So I would just continue to be her annoying little sister. And so then when they would give her orange Jell-O and I'd come in the next time, she'd say, I saved this for you. Had orange Jell-O
Oh,
this morning. So things like that, just to keep the relationship what it is and keep the person's spirits up.
the Lewis family has got to be one of the most close-knit families I've ever met. Y'all are always there for each other at every event, and you all look so much alike that, like, even before I had met any of you, I was like, oh, that's got to be Monica's sister. That's got to be Monica's mom. But did this experience and you caring for Monica, did that bring y'all even closer, do you think?
It's hard to say. I guess I always felt close to Monica and to my whole family. So I guess I never really thought about it in that regard. I mean, I suppose there were things that never would have known about her in terms of, I mean, you never know somebody's medical conditions and you don't go to the doctor's office with them, things like that. So I suppose to that degree, yes, we were closer because there were just things that she had to allow me in on that she might not have necessarily ever done.
Did it change your relationship at all?
I would say there was a shift, again, from me being the little sister to being the big sister, sort of. So I guess a shift, maybe, not necessarily a change.
How do you two take care of one another now? Obviously, Monica is not in that same place where she needs round the clock care like she did at one time. How do you take care of each other at this point?
I don't know. I mean, I think we just continue to be sisters. And as things come up, our parents are, of course, aging and have different needs that they have. And so we try to do the best we can to juggle everything going on and help them out where we need to and, be there for each other as well.
I think that your family does such a beautiful job, too, of sharing the caregiving. Like, Monica will, keep Jacoby so often, and Monica will take your son Colin places and go to college to help drop him off, those sorts of things. I think your family does such a beautiful job of being like each other's village. It's not, I'm the mom of this child, you're the mom of this child. It's very like woven in together, and it seems like such a part of your fabric as a family to like, yeah, we take care of each other. That's part of it.
It is. And I think it's important, to reciprocate what has been given to you in any system, really, that you're a part of, to try to do the best you can for those who have done it for you. Treat people as you would expect to be treated, because none of us know what tomorrow or even a few hours later will bring. If you're in that situation, you've got to trust that someone will step up, be the next man up and help you and go through it.
What advice do you have for other family members who suddenly find themselves as caregivers?
I would say to remember that the person that's sick didn't expect to be in the position any more than you did, and to be gracious about the fact that the person that's sick feels much worse that you have to help them than you do about helping them. Monica didn't want to ask me to do the things that I've had to do, and she probably wished I didn't have to do them. However, that was the situation. So I always tried to be very careful not to make her feel badly or any worse than she felt being in the situation that she was already in. So be gracious to the person who's sick and be gracious to yourself. It's okay to think, why me? And you might not want to do it in front of the person who's sick or going through it, but it's okay to have those moments and allow yourself that time to feel those things because it's real.
I think that's fantastic advice. It's not going to do you any good to keep those feelings in, but you're absolutely right. This person didn't ask to be in this situation. They weren't expecting it either. It doesn't help the situation if that grief is put on them, or not grief, but I guess it is sort of a grieving process of like, this isn't what we thought life was going to look like.
Yes.
Neither of us.
It's grief, it's trauma. It's a lot of things. It really is. And so therapy is important. I would say if anybody who is going through it or just come out of it or about to go through it, therapy helps if you need to speak to somebody, to vent to somebody, to keep yourself up. Because I mean, I had to be strong and healthy in order to help Monica. I couldn't help Monica if I was mentally or physically not able to do the things I needed to do. So that's important as well.
Well, Betty, thank you so much for sharing about this time. Anytime we talk about Monica's story, I get choked up, and today was no exception. So I just love her so much, and I'm so glad she's here with us doing this work.
She loves you as well. And I must say, I think it's so clutch that you have 2 first names. I love that.
Well, thank you. I'll pass along that compliment to my mother. She'll love it. Well, actually, I don't have to. She listens to every episode, so she'll hear it.
Okay, well, you did a good job, Mom. Love it.
Well, thanks so much, Betty.
Thank you, Sarah Jane.
If you find yourself in a caregiving role, it's important to continue to give some of that care to yourself. Speak to a trusted friend or advisor. Make time for yourself to recharge by doing things you love. And take care of your own health by getting plenty of sleep and eating a nutritious diet. Learn more on our website at nkfi.org. I'm Sarah Jane Castro, and this is The Journey Continues. Prevention is a key part of our mission at NKFI. That's why at the end of each episode, we offer a health or nutrition tip.
Here's today's nutrition tip about probiotics and prebiotics. As defined by the National Institutes of Health, probiotics are live microorganisms that are intended to have health benefits when consumed or applied to the body. They can be found in foods such as yogurt, fermented foods, dietary supplements, and beauty products. Probiotics help your body maintain or replenish a healthy community of microorganisms. Probiotics may also influence your body's immune response. They've been used to treat gastrointestinal conditions like antibiotic-associated diarrhea, inflammatory bowel disease, irritable bowel disease, diverticular disease, dental disorders like tooth decay and gum disease, conditions related to allergies like hay fever, asthma, atopic dermatitis, and other conditions like acne, urinary tract infections, and upper respiratory infections. If you're looking to add some probiotic-rich foods to your diet, try yogurt, buttermilk, sourdough bread, cottage cheese, kombucha, tempeh, fermented pickles, fermented sauerkraut, kimchi, or miso soup. Prebiotics come from plant fibers and aid in the growth or activity of beneficial microorganisms in your gut. Fruits, vegetables, and whole grains are especially those that contain complex carbohydrates such as fiber and resistant starch, contain most of the prebiotics in our diet. Prebiotics can help you absorb calcium, change the rate at which foods cause your blood sugar to rise, ferment foods faster to help you have regular bowel movements, and keep the cells that line your gut healthy. Foods that contain prebiotics include apples, artichokes, asparagus, bananas, barley, berries, flax seeds, garlic, green vegetables, leeks, legumes, oats, onions, tomatoes, soybeans, and wheat. Some foods may also be fortified with prebiotics, such as bread, cereals, and cookies. Try to get prebiotics from your food versus a supplement. With today's nutrition tip, I'm Melissa Prest, a registered dietitian nutritionist,